Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. It's Tracy, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make my new cowl. Now this is more of a neck warmer type cowl. It fits not snugly around your neck. There is a sizable gap around my neck, but you can make this a lot longer so that you can have it more looser, or you can make it a little tighter so it's snug and you pull it up and it really sort of keeps your chin warm. This will stay up, but it is still not tight around neck and face. So this one, it measures, if you're just pulling it flat like this, it measures about 31 centimeters or 12 inches, about a foot. Now I've made this with some really inexpensive yarn. I got this in Poundland. It is a super chunky. There are thicker super chunkies. I think there's one that they also sell it in B&M. It's slightly thicker, but it's just this really lovely kind of fleck chunky yarn. It's nice and soft. It's part of the Knitting Essentials. It's machine washable. These come in 50 grams, and this took 1.5 to make it this size. But as I said, you can, if you want, make it wider and make it an infinity scarf, or you can actually don't join it at all and make it into a scarf. And I'm going to show you how I add the fur. Now the fur is another one of the inexpensive yarns. I don't know why this is moving, bear with me a sec, going the wrong way. One of the inexpensive yarns I bought recently from B&M, and it's by Trim, called Feather Touch, and it's just quite shaggy. Where's the end? There we go. It's like one of the eyelash yarns, but it is really, really fluffy and furry. And a lot of people don't like to work with fur yarns. They find it hard, but this is ever so easy. And I'll show you the technique that I used. And if you didn't want to do that, you could actually just sew it through. So I'll show you how I did it anyway. Now I've made it into a kind of a ribbed style. That was a piece I'd cut off and it was bugging me a little bit, so it fell off. Now there is my join, and as you can see, it's not the most visible of joins. That'd be around the back of my neck in any case, so it wouldn't really bother me so much. So I've used, to make this, a 8mm crochet hook. And I know a lot of people for super chunky would maybe use a 10, but I wanted it to be a fairly, I won't say stiff, but it is drapey. But I wanted it to stand up on itself so that it would be a neck warmer, not something that collapses right down on itself. So I used a smaller hook. Plus, as I say, there are thicker super chunkies out there. So I'm going to show you how I made it and open my first ball. You can use any super chunky, any chunky yarn. All you need to do in that respect is to adjust your crochet hook size and your chain. So for this, I'm just going to make a slip knot. Now hopefully this isn't going to keep travelling. I'll have to keep my eye on that. You make a slip knot however you normally do. That's how I do it. Slip for some reason out of my grasp. There we are. Right, so I have my slip knot and I'm going to chain a total of 60. So obviously a chain is just to yarn over and pull through. You don't want them tight. You want them fairly, I wouldn't say baggy, just loose. This is a Knit Pro hook. I've not used it before. I was going to use one of my new hooks that I want to review, but they tend to have quite a bulbous hook, which makes it hard, I think, to do the chain. It just feels like it pops through. So I'm going to do 60 chain, as I said. So I'm going to pause the video and get up to 60, because there's nothing worse when you're trying to count when someone else is also counting, and plus it's boring watching me make 60 chains. So I'll pause it now and come back to you once I have them. Okay, so I have my 60 chain. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way along, trying to keep it completely straight because we're going to make a ring. If you find that is always hard for you to do, then what you can do is just do your first row and join that. So now I'm going to make sure this tail is at the bottom and insert my hook into that first one, and I'm going to join it with a slip stitch. So that's just pulling that yarn through both of those loops. Now I'm going to do one chain and cinch it right down so that chain doesn't count. So I'm going to go into this same stitch. I'm going to pull my loop a little looser because cinching it down did tighten it. And I'm going to do a UK double crochet, which is a single crochet in the US. So just yarn in, pull up a loop, 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both of them. And I'm going to do that in every single one of these chains. Exactly the same. And it's a very simple round. Just watch you don't twist. It is easy to do, but it shouldn't, it should be easy to get out of, because if you've traced it all the way along and joined your ring, it shouldn't twist. It just can have that illusion sometimes. You just need to make sure it's in the right place. And if that happens when I get to the end, I will show you. So that is all we're doing in every single one of the chain. We're just inserting, yarn over, 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both. So that's all we're doing all the way along, which is a very simple and easy stitch. So I'm going to pause the video because, again, I don't want you to be bored watching me do this whole round of a UK double, which is a single crochet, remember, in the US. And I'll catch up with you when I get almost back to the start. Right, so I'm getting back, and this is what I mean. It looks like it's twisted, but it really hasn't. Just trace it along, and then when you get to this part, you'll see it's not twisted at all. It just has that look that it is twisted, but it really isn't. As long as that is at the bottom, and we just keep a hold of it now, and then it should be fine. So we're just going to carry on, 1 in each of our 60 chain. Now with mine, I showed you I did have 2 kind of rows of fur. Now where I've placed that row of fur, you might not want to keep it in the same place, and I will show you what I mean. Now this is my cowl, and as I've got it on and I pull it up so that it's snug against my mouth, if I want to really pull my collar up, I'm going to get this in my mouth. So if you wanted to, you could do 1 in the middle and 1 at the bottom, or you could just do a couple in the middle. You could do whatever you want really, but I don't really pull it up over my face as such, so I decided on my 2 rows. You can keep it the same as mine, but I will show you what we do when we do this row, and you can decide where you want to put them. So okay, we're all the way back. Now our tail is at the bottom, and so this is our first stitch, and I'm going to go into the back loop only and do a slip stitch. And there's a reason for that. To get this rib, I'm going to do 1 chain, cinch it down. So this again is our first stitch. So I don't want a tight loop. I'm going to go in that back loop only and do my stitch, and that's my first. So now I'm going to go in the back loop of every stitch. That's what makes this rib effect. So every single one into the back loop only. So you're just going in that one, and we're going to carry on. It's exactly the same stitch, just in the back loops, and we're going to go all the way round just through the back loops, and it makes this little ridge. You can see it forming. Now when you're working it, it does look like it's pulling big gaping holes, but as you work across, they close and tighten up. It's ever so simple. It's there's not a great deal of difference in the stitches for the whole thing. The only difference being the furry rows, or preparation for the furry rows. I originally was going to have 3 fur rows, and the middle one was going to be a different colour. I have a kind of a butterscotch one, and I was going to put it along here so that it broke these two, and I had one kind of butterscotch in the middle. But I figured you wouldn't see much of the ribbon if I did that, so because they bush up. So I just left it at the 2. So I'm going to pause the video because, as I say, it is all the same all the way along. Just make sure you've still got your 60 stitches at the end of the row. But it's one in each of every back loop, and that's easy to see. You can see the front there and the back. It's nice big stitches, so you can easily spot them. Okay, so I'm going to pause it, and I shall catch up with you when I get back to my start. Okay, so I've made it all the way back, and here I am again. There's my first stitch, so I'm going to just slip stitch again into the back loop and do my chain, cinch it right down. So now I'm going to make a preparation for my furry row. Now, as I say, I chose to have it that close to my start. If you were making this and you didn't want it around your face, like around your mouth, then it would be the last one that you need to skip, or put it in further down around the middle maybe. So that's the one you need to decide on. But the bottom one, that's fairly at the bottom. So I did 2 rows, and then I did my preparation for my furry row. So what we're going to do then is we're going to go into the first stitch as normal and do our UK treble, US single, and we're going to do a chain. We're going to skip one and go into the back loop of the next stitch. Chain 1, skip 1, and then go into the back loop of the next stitch. So we're kind of making holes. They do close up, so they're not gaping. But chain 1, skip 1, into the black loop of the next stitch. And we're going to do that all the way around, and skip 1 in the back loop. And that's very simple all the way around. That's all we're going to do. And what we're going to do then is, this is where we're going to use our furry row, and I'll show you that at the end. It's ever so simple. You can, if you want, just weave it through, like sew it, but I like my way. It's not too difficult. It's easy to master. So skip 1 and 1 through the back loop, and we're just going to do that all the way around. So yet again, I shall pause the video because it's all the same. Skip 1 and come back to you when I get back to the start. Right, so I've made it all the way back round, finishing on a 1 chain. That way I've got exactly the same stitch count, and I'm going to go into my very first stitch, back loop, and do my slip stitch. And do my chain, cinch it down. Now we're going to go back to get our stitches as we had them before. So in that first stitch, as it was a back loop anyway, and we're going to go through the back loop of the chain that we made, back loop of the stitch, there's our chain between, into the back loop. So we're just putting it back the way it was all the way around. It's a very simple stitch, but I like the way that this rib looks. I think it looks quite fetching, especially in this super chunky. I knew I'd find a use for this yarn. Okay, so that is all I'm doing through the back loop of every stitch and every chain all the way around. Make sure at the end of the row you still have your 60 stitches. I'm going to pause it and I'll catch up with you when I get back to the start. Right, so I've made it all the way around again. Now between my 2 fluffy rows I have 8 rows, so that was my first. So now what we want to do is make a slip stitch to join as usual, chain and cinch it down, and I'm going to do 7 more rows. So I'm going to not show you the 7 rows because they're all the same as this previous row, going through the back loops, 60 stitches, and once I've done the next 7 rows, I will come back to you. So go ahead and make 7 more rows. Incidentally, if you wanted it bigger, and if you wanted it longer, that's fine. Your stitch count can be whatever you want it to be. But if you wanted it taller, you just, obviously you can put more rows in, you can put more fluffy rows in. It really is up to you. But I have a total of 12 rows. So I have 8 and 2 each side of my furry rows. Well, so that's, the furry row is part of it still. So I think it's like 12 rows. 1, 2, 8, no, 14 rows, isn't it? With my furry ones. So in that respect, you can put in as many rows as you want to. You can make it much bigger, pull it up and use it as a snood if you want. I've not done that with a chunky yarn like this, and I don't know how that would bunch around the neck area. So, you know, it really is whatever you want to do with it. But I decided that I just wanted kind of a neck warmer type cowl for this particular one. So I'm going to pause it then, and I'll come back to you once I've done my remaining 7 rows. Okay, so here we are. I've done that, and I'm going to do another row to make a fluffy edge. Remember, you don't have to do this one if you don't want it to be kind of where your mouth will be. So again, it's 1 stitch, 1 chain, skip 1 into the next one, back loop, 1 chain, skip 1 into the back loop of the next. And it's again exactly the same as we did before, all the way around, skip 1. Okay, so you've seen that before. I'm going to pause it then, and I'll catch up with you once I get back to the start. Okay, so I've gone all the way round. I'm going to join my slip, well, finish with my 1 chain, join again with that slip stitch, and do my chain, cinch it down, and now I'm going to go into that same stitch again, and we're going to do into the chain as well, the back loop, and we're going to carry on just like we did after the first time we did this row. But for this is going to be my first row, and then I'm going to do 1 more. So it, just as we had 2 rows before our holy row, we have 2 rows after. So this is the second to last row. So I'm going to do this one and 1 more only, and then I'm finished. But like I said to you, it really is your personal preference on how wide you want it to be. So just going in the back loop of the chain, back loop of the stitch, all the way around. I'll pause it then and catch up with you again once I've got all the way around. Okay, so I've made it all the way round. Going to join with a slip stitch into the back loop, just as we do all through this. 1 chain, cinch it down, and this is going to be my last row of going in the back loop of every single stitch all the way around. So I'm going to pause that then. Don't forget to go in the first stitch as always, and I'm going to go in each one. This is the last row, so once we get to the end of this one, we're just going to end off with this particular yarn. So I'm going to pause it then and catch up with you when I've got all the way around. Okay, so I finally made it all the way round, so I'm just going to slip stitch into my beginning. Well, it's hard to get into that one. Pull it tighter. Going to cut off a nice long tail and just end off. That will be sewn in, so it'll be invisible, so don't worry about that. So now we've got the fur. And I know everybody is the bit that everybody dreads. So this was the other fur that I considered using. It's Cedar Alpine. Comes in a 50-gram ball. And this is called Lynx. So I did toy with this one because it is a little bit more of a, well, it's a more finer fur, but it's more of a butterscotch kind of colour. I thought it might look nice, but I decided against it and just to go with the trim, which was the same colour after all. And then I haven't got the worry that it might not be a perfect colour match. So here we go. Let's just clear that other yarn out the way for a second because I don't want it to tangle. And we'll get this one out. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever done this before, but you will need obviously a darning needle at the end of this. So what I do is I go to my rear, to my join. So this here is my row that is purely for my fur row. So I'm going to keep the tail on the inside and pull up a loop. Now make sure you've got a nice long tail and keep it well out the way, and this one, because there is a tendency to pull them through. So now we're just going to look and go into our first space, yarn over and pull it through. Pull it through a ways because otherwise you have to pull loads out. So then we go into the next one, there, yarn over and pull it through. Put it back on itself and down again, and it keeps it fluffy. And again we go into the next one. See, it's so simple. We're just making a chain through the work. And I did this kind of technique on a gift bag or hot water bottle cover that I made last Christmas. There is a tutorial for it. But it's so simple, and yet it's really effective. So if you pull it up and then back, you don't have to spend ages pulling the yarn through, which I didn't do the first time round. So into the next one, yarn out. You can see that under here, I'm just yarning over and pulling it through. Sorry, just hit the camera. So yeah, that's all there is to it, all the way to the end. But you just got to make sure that this is the one you've come out of, so you're going into that one next. Not the same one, obviously, so you're getting a tangle. But it is really that simple. Make sure you pull it out and back on itself, and it keeps the fluff nice and perky. You haven't got to go trying to drag it through. So you can quite clearly see how easy it is. So as long as you make sure that you keep this back and this back, it won't come through. Otherwise you can get in a bit of a knot. That happened to me yesterday. I learnt the hard way to keep it back. But that's as simple as it is. Just pulling it through, make sure you pull it up and back on itself, and it does all the work for you. And isn't that simple? See, I told you it would be simple. Pull it through the loop. Put it up and back on itself. All the way round. So I'm sure you've got that now, but I will do a couple more with you. So this one we've been in, we're going in that one. And pull it through and through the loop on your hook, put it up and back. See, ever so simple. I'm only doing it through one then the other to show you. You can just pull it straight through. It's nice and easy. So it's simple as that. How about that? So we're going to do it all the way around. So I'm going to pause it because you've seen me do it quite a lot now. And if you want to rewatch it, you can always rewind it a little bit. So I'm going to go all the way around, and then I'm going to come back to you when I get back to the start again. Okay, so I've made it all the way round. Now this is probably the trickiest part. I'm going to pull up this big loop, and I'm going to go in to my next stitch along. You might have to part your fluff, and I'm going to bring that loop through and in. Okay, so now I'm going to cut this yarn. Nice big tail. This is where I got fluff from before. Okay, and I'm going to pull it all the way, pull that loop all the way through. So now both, turn it in the other way. I've got both ends, and I'm going to tie that in a double knot because I worry about things coming undone. So that's now in a double knot, and all I have to do is sew these ends in on this wrong side, and you can very easily work it across and then sew this end in as well. But before I do, I'm going to make that one a bit shorter because I did go a bit over the top with my length of that one. I'm going to do the same again for the other side, and there we go. So we'll have two furry sides. Now if you wanted to, as I say, you could have done it in the middle, you could have done anything you want, but I decided to keep mine the same as the previous one. So I'm going to do that whole thing all over again on this top section. So you've seen me do it once. I'm going to pause it and I'll come back to you when that's all done and dusted. Okay, so I've made it both way round, and this is the right way. Put all the ends on the inside, and you can see both of my furry bits are done, and it's all finished. All that remains is to sew the ends in, and they may look daunting, but this actual stuff, that part there is the thickness, and it really does go in to the needle. I'll show you. You just double it up and you can push it in with your thumb really easily. Look at that. It threadles easier than the super chunky, and it is ever so simple just to work your way along this fluffy row and bury it. It's ever so easy to do. So, and it doesn't come back out again. And when you cut off the end, you can leave a bit because it's just fluffy, isn't it? So you don't have to get too close. There we go, that's one. And this, if I want to put this in my darning needle, I just twist it so it becomes thinner, and then I somehow managed to poke it in to my darning needle with my thumbnail, and then we can go along. This is the rear, the back view, so we can just try and bury this one along this row. And I always go one way, pull it so that I can't see anything from the top, and then I can't thread it first, but I need to make sure that I'm going back the other way and it's not visible. Where's that one? There we go. Go there. And now I just pop it back in. Pop it back into my darning needle. Now it's all traced through. And then I'll pull it the other way through my work. And there's only a little bit then to just snip off carefully. There we go. So now I've just got to do this end, these two, and my first one, and that is all done. So, and it's so easy to do it that way with the fur. Anyone could do it, seriously. I know a lot of people are put off by working with furry yarns, but there are ways. So thank you for watching. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be informed when there are new videos. And well, let me know what you think. Thank you very much. And as I said to you before, you can play with this. You can make it much wider. You can make it deeper. You can put the fur in the middle and the end. You can do what you want, really, so that it doesn't go in your mouth. If you want to pull it up, you can make it into a snood, all sorts of things. So or just a plain scarf. If you made it longer, you could still put the fur through exactly the same way. Or if you wanted to, you could just threadle it up and do it as a running stitch, but it wouldn't look quite as bushy and tufty as it does by doing it that way. So hope you like that. Thank you very much for watching, and bye bye for now. See you on the next one.